So, welcome to our second panel, curious about corporations, policy and sustainability. So as we dive deeper into the interconnected world of sustainability, we're going to explore the pivotal role that corporations and policies play in shaping our future. So sustainability isn't just a challenge for individuals or grassroots movements, it's a strategic imperative for businesses and governments alike, as we heard in our first panel. So today we have two extraordinary thought leaders who embody this balance of policy, corporate strategy and impactful action. First, we're honoured to welcome James Gomme, Director at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. So James brings unparalleled insights from his work with business leaders and practitioners into how global corporations are transforming their business models to prioritise sustainability while driving economic success. Striving for that balance that we heard is so hard. With his expertise in fostering cross-sector collaboration, James will share how policies and innovative business strategies are helping companies lead the way to address some of these global environmental challenges. And joining James is Iris Konrad. She's a sustainability specialist at SAP. She's been instrumental in integrating eco-friendly practices within corporate operations and demonstrating how technology and innovation can harmonise efficiency and responsibility. And so let us kick off maybe with just hearing a view from each of you on where you stand and also anything you'd like to build on from what we heard in our first panel. So James, if I can pass over to you for a few minutes to share your thoughts, please.
Sure. Thank you, Simon, and pleasure to be with you. I think, yeah, lots of a lack of hope perhaps in that first discussion. I think it is hard to remain hopeful in these uncertain and changing times with such challenges ahead of us. But I think also important to perhaps embrace multiple truths at the same time. So the fact that we do see science telling us that we're running out of time, we see the planetary boundaries, as Jonathan was mentioning, being transgressed, up to 7 of those now. But also we perhaps underestimate how quickly our natural systems can bounce back if we do give them the chance to regenerate and if we invest in that regeneration. Likewise, the threat of socio and economic consequences merging into a polycrisis is very real and a scary prospect. But at the same time, we do have many technological and commercial solutions that are charging ahead quicker than they ever have done before. And we do have businesses that are slowing things down and not being progressive enough to advance this agenda and being self-interested. But on the flip side, we do have companies that are driving forward towards that brighter future that we talked about as well. So I think important to embrace those multiple truths and try and keep our glasses half full and half empty at the same time. When we're talking about sustainability, getting to that what is sustainability question, I think very easy, particularly for some of the companies we deal with, to be overwhelmed by all of the different sustainability conversations that are going on constantly, lots of new issues constantly emerging, the complete alphabet soup of acronyms, particularly in the reporting space, that are overwhelming a lot of companies in terms of their reporting requirements. At WBCSD, we tend to distill things into 3 highly interwoven, urgent systemic crises in the form of the climate emergency, nature loss, and also socioeconomic issues and mounting inequality. And so those things we see is the key ways of framing this, the problems that we're facing. Climate change, we've talked about obviously as well. We're at 1.2 degrees of warming already. We're cruising towards 2 degrees warming in the next 20 years and 3 degrees and perhaps beyond. But after that, we don't take action. $200 billion worth of economic damage done in 2023 alone. Looking for similar levels this year. Predicted that by 2050, we'll have 20% of GDP lost as a result of climate impact. So a very real threat to long-term business continuity. On the nature side as well, obviously, we've seen incredible amounts of the natural world depleted over the last 50 years. 73% of all life on Earth, WWF tells us we've lost since the 1970s. So clear need for regenerative action there. And on the social side, and of course, that is part of nature as well. People are part of nature. But these rising inequality around the world leading to a lot of the polarization that we've been seeing, disparities in income, wealth, and well-being, all having terrible effects. And the numbers there equally sobering when we think that the richest 10% of people in our society now hold 75% of all of the wealth, and the bottom half, the poorest half of humanity, holds just 2% of the wealth. So something's wrong with our system, and we do need to take action to address it. and lots of bad news out there. But the reality, although that reality is stark, we do have this window of hope still open for us. And we have this, science tells us, we have this 5-year period now, where if we do take rapid transformative action, we can reduce some of these impacts and put ourselves on a more positive path forward, no matter how unlikely that may seem some days. So we have to take the opportunities that we have. Many businesses are embracing that need for transformation, but it is difficult. We are seeing transformation in many areas as well. If we look at the growth, say, in the electric vehicle market over the last few years, where we've jumped from sales of 320,000 units in 2014 to 14 million units in 2023, we're seeing these exponential growth curves of solutions starting to emerge. Likewise, I think the green steel market's predicted to grow by 141,000% over the course of the next decade. So there are these huge economic opportunities for companies that are willing to be part of this transformation. But there really is no time to lose, because change has never been this fast, but it will never be this slow again. So, of course, companies that are not taking action, I think, now are going to miss out on seizing these opportunities of the sustainability transformation, which we often equate to the digital transformation. I think we're in the foothills of a sustainability transformation, but we see it being as impactful as the digital transformation was over the last 20, 30 years or so. And I think if we're looking at some of the barriers that are stopping companies from taking action there, when we've spoken to CEOs, we did a big CEO study over the last couple of years, and the 3 key barriers that were preventing companies from taking action on seizing these opportunities and driving this transformation forward were really short-term incentives, both within the company and in the markets. Then sustainability is still perceived across much of the business as a cost mindset, so not seen as an opportunity area, but a cost area that was holding growth back. And then this lack of sustainability skills and awareness piece as well. And I think that's a key area that we need to address. The companies don't currently have the right level of skill, the right level of awareness of all of these sustainability challenges to really innovate and drive solutions forward. So those are some of the key areas that we're looking to tackle moving forward.
Fantastic. Thank you, James. And Iris, now I'd love to come to you and get your reflections and thoughts as well.
Thanks a lot, Simon. And first of all, it's really a pleasure to be here with you. Well, I would like to pick up one thought that was mentioned in the previous panel. That was, we got all the knowledge we need in order to fight the huge sustainability challenges that we are all witnessing. And while I would agree on it, in general, I would argue that, in the context of corporates, it is partly true. We either are lacking knowledge or are lacking the tools to really effectively and efficiently steer on this knowledge, in a sense that we would increase the positive impact a corporate might be having or decrease the negative impact that a company might be having. And that brings me to my focus area, that is impact measurement and valuation. Now, first of all, what is behind that, and why is there a need for implementing and introducing an additional tool that is meant to be an additional to classical accounting system? Well, did you know that the basis for how corporates are doing financial accounting was invented more than 5 centuries ago? So this means that there is a quite effective, quite mature system for financial accounting, measuring financial impact, but a system for measuring the impacts that a company has with its business activities across its entire value chain on society and on the environment still is lacking or not used at all. And I think this is, in the context of corporates, one of the root causes for the sustainability challenges that we are all facing. And in order to constantly improve the sustainability performance, that should intrinsically be the motivation anyhow, companies should be rather part of the solution than part of the problem. Companies need this knowledge. They need the insights. They need to understand where exactly are the impacts that they are generating. And besides the, license to operate that James has alluded to in a great way, that it just makes sense for companies from an innovation perspective and so on to focus on sustainability. I think the overarching theme really is to decrease the negative impact and increase the positive impact, and with that improve the sustainability performance of a company overall. Now, how can this work? That's where this concept of impact measurement and valuation would come into play. What does this mean? Well, this concept, as said, is a complementary approach to financial accounting system and builds on the basis of ESG reporting, environmental, social, and governance reporting. These are indicators where data is collected and reported on by many companies already today because there are legal obligations to do that. Impact measurement and evaluation builds on this data that is being generated anyhow and translates this classical ESG data, we call it physical metrics, into monetary terms. So at the end of the day, we would see what is the impact a specific business activity across the entire value chain of a company has on environment and on society in monetary terms, so in US dollars, euros, or in whatever currency would be required by that company. And that has three main advantages. First of all, it allows for comparison across sustainability metrics, because how would you compare 1 cubic meter of water consumption to 1 ton of CO2 equivalents to social indicators such as forced labor or child labor that is typically measured in cases? It's just hard to compare, if not possible at all. Secondly, those persons in a company that are really, driving business decisions typically are not used to those sustainability concepts. The language they know is money at the end of the day. So translating these sustainability impacts into monetary terms really allows for interpretation for those people that at the end of the day make the business decision. And thirdly, it allows for an integration into the classical financial accounting system, so that at the end of the day, if a business decision will be made, it won't be based purely on classical financial metrics such as profit, loss, and so on, but it would also take into consideration the impact, again, on environment and on sustainability. And to make it maybe a little bit more concrete, let me share with you one tangible example. That would be a company such as my employer would have to decide on where to create a new data center, where AI models would be deployed. And as you might have heard that water consumption is an issue, an increasing issue in the context of AI. So it should, besides the fact that it will be a business case, it should also take into consideration what are the local water stress levels. This tool, impact measurement and evaluation, considers where the water is consumed, because it's not irrelevant whether it will be consumed in Spain or in Norway, or in the state of California or in the state of Alaska, and uses those contextual factors that are science-based in order to translate cubic meter of water consumption into monetary terms. So at the end of the day, the business decision on where to create a new data center will also be based on the local water stress levels or other sustainability indicators. And that, again, will help to constantly improve the sustainability performance of a corporate.
Fantastic, thanks, Iris. So we've got lots of questions coming in and lots of things I'd like to cover with both of you. So maybe, first of all, James, a question to you based on something Sarah was asking within the chat. So you've done a lot of thinking around the sort of system in which organisations and governments operate. So Sarah's asking you, could we mobilise the young people and their strength of feeling around sustainability in order to influence the system, or can that help to change us onto a more positive path? So could you maybe talk a little bit about the role that maybe young people can have and how that incorporates into the bigger system that's at play here?
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting comment. And I think something that a lot of our members at WBCSD, so a lot of the companies we work with, are embracing as part of their strategies too. Often, you can turn up at events like COP and business is represented by the older generations, so we say, and typically, male, pale, and stale representatives are often the order of the day for a lot of the companies that are there. Some of the companies we're working with now bringing strong youth delegations as well. So the business is also represented by youth. There are young people in businesses, and bringing those young people into those conversations to bring the voice of youth from a business perspective as well. I think as well, looking at the kind of outside of the walls of business, also a lot needs to be done in terms of, getting back to that point, having the right skills and the right mindsets in companies to drive this agenda forwards, for business to really work more closely with the education system and send the right signals of the skills that it now needs. So I think a recent survey that we saw done by Manpower Group, one of the world's biggest HR companies. 40,000 companies they spoke to. 94% of those companies said they didn't have the right skill balance within their companies to currently meet their ESG skills. And there's a huge sort of an outpacing of demand versus supply when it comes to the next generation sustainability skills that people are going to need. So we need to make sure that young people and the energy that they're bringing into these organizations is combined with the right skills and the right directions from the education system to prepare them to be sustainability leaders in their organizations, that we're not following the same education patterns that have actually led us into this as well. And that's why we need to talk to business schools as well, so we're not churning out the same old learning that's based on the current incumbent system, and then we prepare ourselves for a brighter world.
So we need to equip people with the skills to be able to work in the sustainable way. Next. So Iris, there's a question here from Tatenda. So how can companies measure and track impact, sustainability, performance, and what metrics should be used to evaluate the progress? And maybe as an additional build on that, we recently had Indy Johar on our podcast, and he shared a fascinating data point around 68% of the S&P 500 companies would be non-viable if they accurately priced in their environmental impact. So I guess metrics, how do we make sure we've got meaningful metrics to the question from Tatenda, and are those metrics really reflecting the impact that organizations are having?
Yeah, so I would try to split my answer into two parts. First of all, how can we actually create those actionable insights maybe? I think very pragmatically, we would build on ESG metrics. Why? Because they are standardized, at least in a great way already. And we would add this factor of valuation that would allow for the monetization. And here it's really about coming from insights, because we got these insights for many sustainability indicators. We got the data, companies, as said, already need to report on them. But we need to make them actionable. We need to come from those insights to from those insights to action. And I think this is also a theme that was picked up in the previous panel. And in my view, in the current state of ESG metrics, this is not possible. Now, the second part, well, it's really about making transparent those externalities, right? Understanding that corporates do have an impact with everything they do on the environment. And it's not only this outside-in perspective from the financial market to how businesses are doing, from investors, how businesses are doing, but it's really about this inside-out perspective as well, the double materiality. And here, standardization is crucial. And I think we're not there yet, that we would be in a scenario where those externalities can be standardized. And this is very critical in my view, because companies that are front running, that are disclosing those externalities, need incentives to do so. It needs to be a fair level playing field in order to ensure that they would continue to disclose this data and would not, run risk to have competitive disadvantages. It's about comparing apples with apples. And I think it's really on the standard setting bodies to come up with meaningful standards.
So sort of coming back a bit to Peter Drucker's comments of years ago, you can't manage what you can't measure, that if we measure it, if we create the transparency, if we show the impact, then maybe that will bring about the action that is needed.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So James, maybe a question building on your last point around that sort of 94% of organizations don't have the skills. So what are the skills required to equip people for ESG and sustainable working?
Yeah, so I think it's a bit of a mix. And first of all, there is a bit of a terminology soup that we need to wade through as well. There's new terms like green skills and greening skills and turquoise skills and blue skills that needs some navigation and hopefully some convergence at some point. But I think generally it falls into two categories of skills. So there's the technical understanding of sustainability. at sort of the broad level, sustainability fluency, and then as you get into more specific functions, a technical then interpretation of what sustainability means in the context of that role. That could be new roles, or it could be completely, the conversion of existing roles as well. So things like hydrogen innovation or solar power installation, these sort of technical pieces that are going to relate to new green products and services. And then, of course, the greening of roles like accounting or whatever to incorporate some of what Iris is talking about in terms of how we manage things. So there's the kind of the technical piece, but there's also a really, really important adaptive piece as well, right? If we're talking about completely changing the way many of these companies operate and changing at speed and at scale to be to enable that transformation that we need to see, what are the kind of the adaptive skill sets? And there we've been working closely with an organization called the Inner Development Goals, who have started to bring a framework around some of the key adaptive skills that we need to realize the ambitions of the Sustainable Development Goals. And they have a series of 5 pillars around being, thinking, relating, collaborating, and acting. And there's encouraging qualities like systems thinking, courage, or perseverance as we face these things. So I think that's an important piece as well. And in that context, critical that human resource teams are taking this agenda on head on and working closely with their sustainability teams as well. We've often seen a bit of a disconnect there between sustainability and the human resource function. And I think we need to sort of bring those two worlds closer together so that we're really investing in developing these skills, both on the technical and on the adaptive side.
And that aligns with what I think Gwenola in the chat was saying around that link through to the Inner Development Goals as being a great framework. So if people aren't familiar with that, I would urge you to look up the Inner Development Goals tied into those UN Sustainable Development Goals in terms of a great framework for the skills that we need to be thinking about for the future. Thank you, James. So Iris, maybe another question here from Maeve for you. Any top tips in embedding ESG metrics into business cases for capital investment? So how can you help people to create the case for investing in things that are really going to make a difference across the organizations that are listening to us?
Yeah, I think there are 2 perspectives to it. One is the financial market, represented by investors in that case, if this question is referring to that one. And then the second one is if you're already working for a corporate. With regards to the investors, I would say, ask for data, ask for corporates to disclose the right data, and also challenge on the meaningfulness of this data, on the comparability of this data, and especially also on the methodologies that are being used. For instance, with regards to this impact methodology, it's really important to note that the basis is scientific. And I think this is a crucial guardrail that needs to be followed, that, again, will ensure consistency and will ensure credibility. And I think another thing that is really important to note is that collaboration is key. It's not only about requesting the data, but then also on providing feedback, providing insights, and so on, because at the end of the day, it's a mutual learning journey. It's a greenfield for many corporations still. And here, collaboration across sector boundaries is required and will be required in this, pre-competitive environment. And then when it comes to the corporate perspective, well, I think that the vast majority of companies is required to disclose sustainability data anyhow, depending on the size, obviously, of the company. But here, the challenge would be to what can be done in order to go beyond compliance. Yes, we need to disclose the data. We need to disclose specific ESG indicators and so on. But what is really the value add of disclosing this data? Or can we come to a scenario where we would leverage these insights, this data, to, again, make meaningful actions, let meaningful actions being following on these insights, to come up with meaningful programs to really achieve a status where we can, change the way corporates are being managed, and where we can come to a status where corporates can be part of the solution.
Thanks, Iris. We're down to our last few minutes. Maybe the same question I'd like to pose to both of you, and it's a question that we've had from Tracy, and also a similar question from Evrim. So how can we personally be part of helping action the changes that we need? So what can people do at a personal level to be part of the initiatives that will actually make a difference and take us to that glass half full rather than glass half empty situation that you described, James? So what can people practically do?
Yeah, I think always a tough one. I think there's a couple of things, right? So we can take effort to minimize our own impact as much as possible. Forum for the Future has some great work on that as well. Also, Futera has some fantastic sort of tips on living a more sustainable lifestyle in a practical way. I think as individuals, as part of corporations or larger institutions, and I think then it's about getting your voice heard as well and calling for the action that you think is needed and translating sustainability. I think taking the time, first of all, to understand sustainability, as Jonathan was alluding to, it's a concept that is understood differently by different people, but to really understand what the state of the world is, and the state of the social issues that are out there too, and to translate that then into how that relates to your function and your organization and how you can drive that forward. I think so spending the time to really take the temperature of what's going on and to understand how your function can play a key role in driving that forward in the larger context. And then I think, doing our best to practice those in the development goals as well. Practice those skills around optimism and perseverance and courage that we're going to need moving forward. I think because, it's not going to be easy. There will be days when it's going to seem overwhelmingly difficult, but I think we have to keep that optimism up and keep driving forward with purpose.
Great, thanks, James. And Iris, your thoughts on what can we do individually or in our roles in organizations?
Yeah, I think James already mentioned great resources to understand better where the impact at the personal level might be the biggest. I would rather like to answer this question at a higher level with 3 parts. First, every action matters, every action counts. Secondly, actions speak louder than words. And thirdly, don't lose the hope. And the last one, for me personally, is very important because, dealing with sustainability aspects each and every day, I see a lot of hope. I see a lot of opportunities and great perspectives, but obviously also frustration. And I think it will just be key to not lose hope and to look positively and optimistically into the future.
And hope was the word in the center of our word cloud in our first exercise. So that bodes well. James, Iris, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. And with that, let me pass over to Paul for our next exercise.